Welcome everyone to tonight's SAGA session. SAGA, for those of you who are new to this, is the Swedish Annual Game Design Awards. And these sessions are a way to spread knowledge about game design. And we invite a keynote speaker each time we do this, who will present a topic of their choice. And tonight, Jasper de Lange will talk about his game Bohemians, which was released really fast. And you will hear a lot more about that in just a moment. I should also mention that these SAGA sessions are done in collaboration with Studiefrämjandet Stockholm and the Swedish Discord channel Speldesign Bubble. And look out for a YouTube video link for this session afterwards if you are interested in more of these sessions. Okay, so without further ado, I will let you take over, Jasper. Are you ready to share your screen?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Tobias, for the introduction. I will try to get my presentation going. Yes, there we go. Can I even control this from here? Wow, sorry, this is just a hiccup at the start. No, I will go to my other screen. So yes, I'm Jasper. I'm a game designer from the Netherlands, and I currently live in Denmark. And this is my some pictures of my game, but I can actually now show you that I have physical real proof of the game in hand. This is 8 months after pitching it that I have the first production copy in my hand. So extremely fast, at least much faster than I expected or than I heard from other game designers. This is my first game, so I'm going to share a lot of experiences kind of from the perspective of a first-time published game designer. Very different lessons than what we heard last time from Christian and Kenny, I think. But I hope it's interesting, and I think it's interesting also, especially for game designers that still want to get published but haven't so far. So this is me presenting the game at the beginning of this month at the Asmodee Retailer Day in Copenhagen. What I want to start with is to share a couple of kind of common stories that I have heard before getting published that were absolutely not true in my case. And maybe that also shows the relevance of me sharing my process. First of all, of course, I had a conviction going into this, like, I'm new, no major publisher will want to work with me. I'm a bit of a nobody in the space, so why sign a game with me? That was not true. I signed a game with Portal Games, and my game Bohemians will be the main release at Essen Spiel this year of their company. So yeah, it starts out quite big, I would say. Something I hear a lot in podcasts mainly is your first games will be shit, get them out of the way fast, and then you can start pitching real games. Well, this was the first game I ever started working on now 4.5 years ago, when I started having the intention to become a game designer. And this first game is also my first published game. So apparently it's good. I heard a lot that game designers, before they sign a game, like, they first have an interested publisher and they will work with feedback from that publisher for a while and then hear if the publisher is interested. In my case, Portal was immediately interested and immediately offered a contract. So that's also definitely possible. I hear a little bit of feedback. I'm not sure from whom. Just saying. Okay, my game got signed 2 years ago, but I haven't heard back from them. This is in general something I hear a lot, that designers lack communication back from publishers. It's been very proactive in my case. Another version of that story is I got signed, but my game is in the pipeline, planned for years ahead. Somehow I got lucky enough to immediately, I pitched it at Spiel last year, and the game will be released this year at Spiel, so 1 year in between. Then having the expectation that your game will be rethemed by the publisher is of course very common. In this case, maybe the theme was a bit too strongly presented in the game mechanisms to take it out, but they were very happy with this theme as well. And well, as I can show you later, even a lot of the card names from my very first prototype are in the very last printed version. So in some ways, not a lot of change of the game. In another many ways, yes, it got improved, of course, during development. And then what I hear a lot in one version or another is publishers are bad at communication. This is definitely not true in the case of Portal games. I've had a real blast developing with them and having a good flow of communication all the time. So I guess that varies a lot also. Now, I hope that illustrates a bit of how my story is different, and I'm curious also afterwards in the discussion to contrast a bit more with what your experiences might be. What I want to take you through before that is tell you a little bit about how the game works, what Bohemian is, just briefly, and then I want to take you through my process, starting with a kind of timeline, global overview, and then taking you through some of my experiences, going from idea to, well, to a released game and beyond that. So what is Bohemians? Here you see it on the table, some of the materials. The game takes you to Paris, where you will be a struggling artist on the street. Well, at least not yet an artist, a struggling wannabe artist. And you meet all kinds of things that a struggling artist might meet. I'll show you a close-up soon. This is the game as it's being played. This was a very surreal experience the beginning of this month, where I was sitting next to my developer, who's Ignacy Cebicek, the head of Portal Games and the famous, in my eyes, designer of Robinson Crusoe, Detective, and many others. And I was sitting next to him, kind of hanging back, and seeing him explain my game was kind of a magical moment there. Just to show you very briefly here, this is the player board with a couple of cards on it, which shows a typical turn, and that will give you hopefully a good impression. Reading from left to right, this shows a typical day in the life of the artist that you will play, starting by wandering the streets aimlessly together with your muse Camille, then seeking tutelage from your mentor Valerie, I think, to be inspired to sculpt without stopping, and then discipline yourself in the evening. And all that day you are suffering from malnutrition. This gives a good example, I think, of what kind of thing can happen in the game. This is one turn and one kind of day in the life. And mechanically, what happens here is that the player tries to link up the icons that you see on the left and the right of each card, trying to gather inspiration points that they can then spend to buy more cards. for their deck, because this is a deck builder that lets you gradually change the habits you have in your life until you are hopefully a successful artist. I hope that's clear enough to kind of take with us through this presentation. Now here I want to take you through my timeline, and you'll see that it starts out very, very stretched out, I would say, and it ends up being extremely compressed. Starting with the idea and the initial prototype I made, I can see that the file I made from my first prototype was in February 21. And it took me some time to get it to the table. I was, of course, quite scared to bring my baby to the table, my very first prototype that I was proud of. So it took until summer to get it tested for the first time. And then it took me 1 year to recover from that playtest. I picked it back up about a year later. One of the reasons that took so long, I think, is that it was my first game, meaning that, yeah, a lot more insecurities going on, but also I started working on a lot of other games in the meantime. And just for context, I won't go too deep into this, but I moved around a lot in those years, and still am, I would say. These are some places I lived in that time in Denmark, Sweden, and Norway. And in the corner on the right, you can see some other games being developed over there in Norway. So I guess those circumstances played a role in why the timeline was quite stretched for me, and it took me quite some time to get into game design. But then the ball started rolling when I went to Fastaval, and I met a couple of people also from this group, I think. In Fastaval, I heard about a designer retreat in Aarhus. I'll take you through this quickly, and there I dared to bring my then prototype of Bohemians and got quite good feedback, quite interesting feedback. And I started mingling more and more with designers that were able to kind of push me on with this game and push me in the right direction. I pitched it for Fastaval in summer and brought it to Malmö Spiel. Then we had a pre-festival testing day that I remember very well, a big downer moment where I thought my game was absolutely shit. And a month later, Fastaval happened, and I was, not me, but the game was nominated in all categories and won the best presented board game. So my image of what this game could do turned around quite a bit there. And from then on, I think it's kind of downhill. Downhill in effort, but uphill in my self-esteem with the game. I brought it to Gothenburg, Speldesigntreff. I had an absolutely crushing playtest there again, which I took very well, and I got ready to pitch the game in Essen after testing it a bit more with my friends in the Netherlands. So testing until I got ready for Essen itself. Here's some nice pictures, including some of you here present, of some of those events that year. I would say that then I got really into the flow of being a game designer, and yeah, it turned out well at that year in Essen, because from that time I can say the timeline with Portal Game starts. I pitched it in Essen, October. November, I had a contract offer and signed it. And the same month, we started developing the game. Until January this year, when it was good enough to show at Nuremberg Toy Fair. So this was not me anymore, but this was Portal Games showing the game to their partners for localization, translation. And it got picked up by quite a number of them. So the game will be releasing in a couple of different languages: English, Polish, French, German, Italian, and Japanese, which I think is a great development that happened off screen for me. And then we started a very intensive stage 2 development until April this year, when the game went to print. This month, no, it's the next month, but June I got the first production sample, and I'm looking forward to the game releasing next October. And already looking forward to after that, when the game is in distribution and when we have some time dedicated to work on expansion development. That's already kind of in the pipeline. So that's just a very, very quick overview of how this whole process accelerated for me. Taking you back to the start, I want to highlight a couple of things along that journey a little bit more. Starting with the idea. I think the idea is important to highlight for me because it's something that really that I carried forward through the whole process, because I believe in something I want to say with this game. That kept me going also in development, and also now in expansion development. There's things I really want from this game. I have a clear vision, and that vision, funnily enough, I know exactly when it started. This is a ticket for the Van Gogh Museum. I will say it in Dutch, the Van Gogh Museum, I mean. In the summer of 2020, I went to that museum, and the thought occurred to me that so many people were standing in line to see the kind of story of a suffering artist with all its ups and downs, and willing to pay money for that. But that's not a kind of story that you see in board games. It's usually not the kind of dramatic personal life stories that we get to see in a medium like board games. And I wanted to see if I could do something like that. Quite an ambitious goal, maybe, but soon enough I started brainstorming some ideas. This is the page where I brainstormed my initial ideas for suits of a deck building game. I thought about deck building right from the get-go, because I think deck building is one way to show a life that kind of slowly changes over time. And here I was kind of working on a Star Realms like different colored suits with different focus of themes that is still in the game, largely as I brainstormed it then. This is my first prototype. I made it in Google Sheets. No, what am I making this in? Google, well, the PowerPoint version of Google. Looks like nothing, but maybe that's good for a first prototype. And I started with a kind of system, Google Slides, thank you, Edmund. I started with a kind of system with trade-offs of you can either make income or you can work on your artistic career. And you can not do both. You have to sacrifice one for the other. And that kind of core trade-off is also still in the game in a very different shape. So moving on from idea to the prototype, I can show you a couple of stages that I took my prototype through and a couple of tools that I used. Here is, I think, the next iteration, about 2 years, 1.5 years later, where I included a worker placement element in the middle, which I ended up throwing out again. I moved on. Well, I won't take you through all the details. I won't remember them anyway, but I took this game through so many versions. The tool I was using here was this. It's Figma. It's a tool that can be used for mostly web page design, I believe. But I found a way where it can do data merge, which seemed to be a very smart thing to do at the time, to make your cards in an Excel sheet and merge it into a layout. It started looking better here. This is the version I took to Malmö Protospiel, and I almost took it to Fastaval as well, but maybe unfortunately for me, I decided it doesn't look good enough. So what I did, this is the version for Fastaval. What I did is take the whole thing into Canva, where I had to do everything by hand for each individual card. So all these icons are dragged there by hand and copy pasted. I got an okay workflow going, but yeah, not considering how many changes I ended up doing in this version, maybe not the smartest choice. Funnily enough, this Canva version I iterated on until, well, this, I think in March, April, when corresponding with Portal Games for the very final version, we were still partially using my Canva files. So yeah, it took a long time to work in this format. Here, just quickly, this is the version I showed for pitching it in Essen. And a little bit later, this was roughly the version that was shown in Nuremberg. Portal actually used a kind of mixed up version with some of their own artwork and graphic design and some of mine for pitching it to partners. So speaking about pitching, my approach to pitching was that I prepared very well. As we briefly talked about in the pre-talk before everyone was here, I used to work in a board game shop in the Netherlands, and I have a lot of knowledge that I bring from about the publishing world into game design. So in some ways, I already had some background in who's doing what kind of games. But I researched a lot because I had a couple of doubts about my game. I thought that the game had too mature themes maybe to be picked up by mainstream hobby publishers. And I really wanted to keep those themes in. And then I thought it might become an expensive game. I made use of a lot of AI art for my prototype, but I really wanted a game that is about the life of artists to use real art. And for 230 at the time, I can see individual art pieces on cards that might be a big investment. So I was very careful who I approached. I ended up approaching 17, emailing them or using various like contact forms. I heard back from 7 of those, and I ended up having meetings with 6 of them. I will skip the pitch video. Maybe we have time at the end for that. I'm also a little bit ashamed of what it looks like, but it ended up actually, the pitch video is really what made my pitch stick with the publishers that I had meetings with. That's what I heard later. So whatever it looks like, it's important to include that couple of minutes showing the game in action. This is a tool made by Chris Bucky, Tabletop Publishers, it's called, and I became a member of this. It's a subscription service that has a database for all publishers that you can find in Essen, and more. And I use this in my research, especially to see what kind of games they have proven to be interested in, specific publishers, and also for just contact details. Sometimes it's hard to find the landing page for game designers. So I found this quite a nice little investment to do. Yeah, you might wonder, what is this? This is a preparation for Essen. On the right side, you can see that I have a lot of printed cards. And I wanted for each of my 6 pitch meetings to have a physical prototype. And just one extra, a 7th, just to be sure, which is not normal, I heard later. On the left side, you can see the knitting club at my school where I was at the time. And I kind of, how do you say, I infiltrated the knitting club and used them to sleeve and cut all my cards, which was an extremely good social investment. I wouldn't have made it otherwise to Essen with 7 of these. So we come to Essen here. A couple of things I want to share. What I really didn't expect was how nice the pitch meetings were, like how kind of natural they went. I guess since I was selective from the get-go, the publishers that I had meetings with about this one game, they also knew what they were getting into. So they were like, you come with Bohemians. Okay, yes. Well, let's play a few rounds. And I didn't really have to do much elevator pitching. It was more getting to know each other and playing a few rounds and talking about the game, which I found very relaxing in a way. The pitch meetings were also very, very different in length. I had one meeting which took 2.5 hours, and we took all the time in the world to talk about life and about where the game could go, and we played the whole game through from start to end. And I was happy to do that at that time. The other pitch meeting, the shortest, was 5 minutes, 4 minutes maybe, which was with Ignacy from Portal Games. He had a very clear message for me, like, we're interested in your game. You don't need to do anything now. We'll just take your prototype and we'll play it, and we'll give you good feedback on it afterwards. Do you have any questions? This basically was the pitch meeting. He also told me that this was his only pitch meeting at Essen this year. So I knew I had quite a good chance at that point. But yeah, and that shortest pitch meeting of all ended up landing me a contract. But that's the range that I kind of didn't expect. Anything else here? No, I'll move on to the contract. When they offered me a contract, I was in talks with 3 publishers. Talks, I mean, emailing back and forth with 3 different publishers about maybe publishing Bohemians. This was 1 month after Essen. And Portal offered me a contract, and of course I was super happy, but I was also super stressed. I was really like, okay, what do I choose? What is smart? What should I consider? So I asked a lot of other designers for help, at least specific designers that I trusted and that I knew had published games. I asked for advice, and that turned out really well. I ended up negotiating a bit, also based on the SAS guidelines that I found. So I became a member of the German Game Design Association. I think that was a good step. I didn't use it too much, but at least it was good for me to have a kind of reference point of what is normal and what can I expect. And then in the end, I considered when my game would be coming out, because I just wanted this game to come out with a cool publisher that I admire. And when Portal said they wanted to release it in Essen next year, I was kind of sold and just went for it. So from that moment on, actually just before signing the contract, Ignacio already emailed me like, hey, shall we just get on with development and let my colleagues sort out a contract with you, because I wanna get this thing going. And I went for it. The development had two very clear stages, and I want to talk a bit about this, because this is a part that I really didn't know so much about. I had prepared a lot about like what to do with my prototype and how to pitch, and spoke to a lot of people about that and heard a lot of podcasts about that. But the development stage was a kind of a black box for me. And I ended up being very, very involved in the development, which equates to a lot of unpaid hours in a way. And in another way, well, my game got better. And I got to have a say in which direction it was taken in. And I learned so much from being involved with all these professionals. So I was very happy to, that they were open to include me so much. Stage one was mainly about kind of checking the game core systems, whether they work, whether the icons are balanced on cards, how the different card types interact and what could be changed about that. Also considering some basic design choices. From the top of my head, we talked a lot about the function of jobs in the game and how they compete with your habits. Well, also whether there should be more player interaction in some way, there should be added elements. What do you do with your leftover points? And importantly, something like the flow of the game. I remember some very intense discussions in January when we were almost at the end, where I was trying to argue for a completely different flow of the game, where everybody plays at the same time. That I think for the better did not get changed in the game. But yeah, a lot of things like were anchored, were settled, and were like checked in that way. Like, is this how we want to go forward with this system? And in that, there was a lot of transfer of tacit knowledge, as I would say. But as a designer, I think what we as designers can bring is a lot of things that we have already tried, that we know maybe don't work or do work, or create weird situations in the game. So both mechanically and also in terms of vision and choices for why certain elements of the game are expressing the theme in a cool way. Maybe also getting the publisher on board with the theme, like, yes, this was a thing people did at that time, or yes, this is a cool thing I want represented because blah. So I was super happy for this point, especially to be present in making choices about the game. So yeah, I don't know why here we see some icons that were changed. We went for double icons at some point, which was a really good choice. Going to stage 2, we go into the super intensive stage for me. Next to my full-time job, I was coming home those days and just started working on my game until late. My girlfriend was cooking, and the next day the same, and the weekend the same. It was really intense. We took apart the whole game and put it back together, which is funny because I thought in stage 1 we had done that. In stage 2, we started having many more phone calls, emails, WhatsApp messages, just a lot of communication back and forth about details of the game. And we started reconsidering every ability of every card. So not the core systems, but individual cards. We started talking about production limits. So what will be the final card count? Which parts do we cut? Which parts do we expand? I started seeing a lot of graphic design iterations. I don't know how many we went through, but at least 10 different versions, which might seem like a superficial kind of choice, but it involved a lot of testing. I guess as we all know, that graphic design in a way is game design. Sometimes even the theme is involved in the graphic choices. So I was also heavily involved in that. I even did some art direction at some point. Not all of it. Of course, I have to say that Portal Games really did a magnificent job with all of this. And I worked with a lot of people in their team. So it's not like I was doing all of this and making all the decisions, but very much included. Final balancing of the game, developing all the solo scenarios. That the base game comes with 4 different solo modes, and I later made a promo 5th one. There might be even more coming. And then when I thought everything had ended, a rulebook marathon started, because of course this needs to be a good rulebook that everyone can understand. And it turned out that a lot of very fundamental rules questions and issues came up during that. And this took a couple of weeks of coming home from work and doing another rulebook review, and the next day again. I think it was about 3 weeks, sometimes with big teams from the side of Portal, like 10, 15 people were writing in and putting comments and reviewing again. So very intensive process. And during that whole process, I kept getting confirmations like, hey, the German edition is now confirmed and the French edition is confirmed. And so a lot of happy news kind of during this process. And what stands out about that for me is that I would say all the publishers that end up doing localization of Bohemians, I kind of did not dare to approach because I was afraid they wouldn't, they would find this game too edgy in a way. But with Portal Games behind me, and Portal Games, I think, was a good choice because they make story-based board games and they like edgy themes in a way. So, but with their backing, French publishers and German publishers, Italians, Japanese, also got the game. Here are some images of me trying to change the whole card set and making suggestions for all the abilities and how they should be changed. Ideas for new cards, changing all the player boards around. Yeah. just some impressions and testing. Until about a week ago, I found this on my doormat, the game itself, with beautiful finished touches in the textures of cards, etc. I see my time is also running out, so I'm nearing the end. After development, because it didn't end yet, I started brainstorming ideas for expansions. And it looks like expansions will be coming, or in some form or another. At this point, we are very much in the brainstorming phase, but since a lot of localization is happening, the print runs are bigger, and that means there's a better chance for expansions coming out. So this is last weekend doing a fully co-op test of the game with some new systems in there. So when the game already went to print, I still did a design for a promo scenario for Essen. I started designing expansions. I will be involved in a board game arena version and testing that, which should come out before Essen still. And I'm doing a lot of demo events, writing designer diaries. I mean, doing a talk like this, getting lots of updates from Portal, and then finally it's release time. And that was me with Ignacy being proud. This is what I have to share. And I'm very curious, maybe after the break, to hear, like, how does this contrast with your experiences, or are there things that you think are like real freak accidents that are in my story, or that are actually pretty normal? Like, I'm curious to discuss about that. And I happily give the floor back to Tobias, our master of ceremonies.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, Jasper. And we will now hold a Q&A, questions and answers, for anyone who has any questions about the topic. And after 15 minutes or so, or when the questions are done, we will take a short break of 10 minutes, and then afterwards we will have an open discussion about anything game design related. So please raise your hand if you have any questions, or write them in the chat. And I see Jason is first to raise his hand. So go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I like you am a one-time board game publisher hoping to become multiple-time board game publisher or designer. But a question I have for you is, what was the most surprising discovery that you made in publishing your first game? I have my answer to that, but I'm curious if yours is the same.
What comes to mind now is like how much of my vision was taken seriously, which makes me also kind of be more self-assured about that. Like, oh, I have something to say. Oh, I have an idea that is worth arguing for. And so how much I could participate fully in this development process with a publisher with a lot of team members that are very attuned to working together. And I just come in as an outsider and come with my ideas and work with several of their team to really make things happen my way, in a way.
Yeah.
Not everything, and I think happily so, because I really trust publishers in general, but Portal Games in particular in this case, like, to make decisions that make sense for their target audience and their market, etc. So yeah, but being taken seriously as a first-time designer. I see the question, how many hours did you work in development?
Good question.
I really did not keep track of that, but it felt like a second full-time job in those 3 months that I was in the between February and April. Yeah, I'm happy that's over because it was really pushing me to my limits. Maybe I didn't have to give that much, but I really wanted to. I mean, yeah.
I'll take the next question myself then. I was wondering, you mentioned there was a few setbacks during the, was it at Fastaval or was it in Gothenburg where you playtested? You mentioned there was the game crashed or something like that. So how hard did it crash and how did you get through it?
In Gothenburg, the game it didn't crash. Jason was there at that playtest actually with Christian and Bastian, and I never took as many notes from a playtest as then. And a couple of new systems were created after me crunching my brain for some weeks after that. So that's a very positive example, I think, of a playtest where my game got analyzed to death and built up again. The playtest just before Fastaval, the game just fell dead. And I think it was circumstances. It was some new system that I wanted to test, and it was the end of the day. And so I can see now, looking back, what other factors were involved, but it was very hard for my motivation to see like this game that I should present to tens, hundreds of people in a few weeks, to see that it could fall so flat, kind of. Where I think the strength of the game is that what happens in interaction at the table, maybe not interaction in the gameplay, but interaction, like kind of role playing that is invited by the game, that I think is the main strength. And if I see that just dying out, then it gets me very worried. Yeah. How did I overcome that? By having a deadline. At Fastaval, I just had to have a good game, so I made it happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Do we have any other questions from the audience? Because I have another one. So I'll go again. I think you mentioned the theme was a turnoff for some of the publishers, or did I misunderstand that? My question was rather, have you had any players, playtesters or regular players who had a bad experience about the theme of the game, where you're struggling artists and this kind of thing?
No, I do not have. Like, I have people for who I've seen players for who the game didn't it was not their type of game, but it was more in the game, not so much in the theme. I've had mostly very positive reactions to the theme, and the best one I would say was from someone like a professional musician who was playing the game and who said, "Wow, I felt so seen by your game, as like my process as an artist and what I go through to make this, things that people don't see when they see me playing my instrument." That was big for me. And in a way, of course, that wasn't maybe surprising because I don't know. I think we as game designers are artists as well, and this is a very self-referential game in that way. Like my struggles as a game designer are reflected in what you as an artist do during the game. How you get inspiration when you make art, what are good moments, what are bad moments, and yeah, that's kind of reflected in the gameplay.
It makes a lot of sense.
Was it a turn-off for publishers? No, only in my mind.
Oh.
I mean, I avoided certain publishers that now are publishing the game. I'm not naming names because they didn't announce it yet. That's the only reason. Otherwise, I would. But think big French publisher, big German publisher.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll hear it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Jason.
Yeah. Just a follow-up comment of don't let other people reject your ideas. Don't reject them yourself or have like self-doubts. There's going to be enough rejection out there in the world. You don't need to be one of the people rejecting your own stuff. But anyways, yeah, my question, if there's, maybe this is the answer to your question as well. What is one thing that you would have done differently?
I already made a list of that. I will really make a point of using data merge. I mean, that point I already made. I will not work on a game this long anymore before I pitch it. I mean, this is also some feedback I got from it during pitch meetings, that the game was very much like had some steps of extra development that a publisher normally would do in the prototype that I pitched. And I think I'm now too much in a flow as a designer and too eager to pitch. I will not do that again. I imagine. But real mistakes, I don't know. Yeah. Writing emails that are too long. But I'm happy also to hear, if this is a question in return, then maybe that if you heard anything in my story that you're like, whoa, that wasn't smart, or I wouldn't dare doing that, or anything that's like, I don't know.
I'll go ahead and jump in and answer that. I can't think of anything that I thought was like, oh, I wouldn't do that. There was a lot of the stuff that you got feedback that you found to be inaccurate. I agree with you 100%. There were a few things that surprised me, but not because they aren't true. Like the people telling you that your first game is going to be not great. Go ahead and make that so you can make the next thing. I think that is a big common truth for a lot of people. I know it was for me, but well done. I guess that just means you're good or lucky. Yeah, but I think being good and lucky are both valuable skills to have, and you need them both in this industry.
Yes, or in any game.
Yeah. Yeah, nothing struck me as that's completely off the wall. I wonder if you could go back to that page again with those. Sorry, I'm monopolizing the chat, but that one slide with your feedback. Yeah, the assumptions, like the first or second slide.
Yeah,
is that possible?
Yes.
Yeah. Someone else was about to talk. I'll shut up.
No, that's okay. That was still on your time, so to speak. But we have a question in the chat as well. Edmund asks if the tariffs in the US somehow got the publishing of your game get more difficult.
Yes. it did affect the choices for production. So the English first print run, that's hopeful of me to call it the first print run. Yeah, it got scaled down because they expect difficulty getting the copies to the US. In the long term, of course, we don't know what will happen. But yeah, the game was too far ahead to be affected in any way by the terrorists. Like in the development, we were already done, basically. So yeah. And I guess I'm lucky that I'm with a publisher from Poland who get most of their income from selling games in Poland. So they are in a good position, I think, in the market to survive well as a publisher, even though the tariffs are hitting everyone hard that wants to sell to the American market. Yeah.
Okay, so back to you, yes, Jason. You had a question about this slide, I think.
I didn't know if I had a question. I wanted to see if there's anything on this slide that struck me as like, that's strange. But yeah, the first 10 games will be shit. Like, hopefully not. But yeah, I know my experience is the first handful of games. I had several attempts before I came across the one that I saw that, okay, yeah, this one can make it to be published. But yeah, I agree. The rest of your advice you've got seems like I've not had those experiences either.
Yeah.
Good.
I mean, just to be clear, this is not what I think is true or not necessarily advice, but it's things I have heard while talking to other game designers.
So you can't trust us. Is that?
Absolutely not. Yeah, I would have to fill 45 minutes of sheets with things that were very valuable that I heard in that same time. So, yeah.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the participants, or do you want to mention something else about your game is coming out at Essen, right?
Yeah.
And how do people get a copy? Do they buy them from the publisher or from their local game store? Or
I mean, I would always recommend anyone to just contact your local game store and go there and ask for the game. It's both good for the store and for me and for the game and the publisher, like for them to hear that people are interested in a game. This goes for any game, not just mine. Just go to your local shop and try to see if they want to order this. Of course, you can buy at Portal Games. I hear some background, but that's no. But yeah, just all the mainstream channels. I think it will be widely available, at least at and around Essen. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I think there are no more questions now, so we will take a short break of 10 minutes, and then we will have continue with an open discussion about this topic or anything else game design related. So thank you all for participating and listening, and thanks to most of all to you, Jasper, for holding this presentation. And I'll see you all in 10 minutes. And I will also stop the recording now, so you know. Okay, see you in a bit. Thank
Thank
you
you.
again.